Kevin, you spoke this morning from Jeremiah 17, starting in verse 5, and it says this. This is what the Lord says. Cursed is the one who trusts in man, who draws strength from mere flesh, and whose heart turns away from the Lord. That person will be like a bush in the wastelands. They will not see prosperity when it comes. They will dwell in the parched places of the desert, in a salt land where no one lives. But blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in him. They will be like a tree planted by the water, that sends out its roots by the stream. It does not fear when heat comes. Its leaves are always green. It has no worries in a year of drought and never fails to bear fruit. The heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it? I, the Lord, search the heart and examine the mind to reward each person according to their conduct, according to what their deeds deserve. And I love the picture that paints in the series we're in, talking about just really having another option, that gospel option that you started with, and how it starts with the value being simply in the trust. Like the blessing, blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord.
Right.
Like you're already blessed if you just trust in him, regardless of the byproduct.
Right.
What a great excerpt, talking and digging deeper into trust, kind of looking at the roots.
Right.
And so I wanted to actually ask a question based on that kind
Sure.
of metaphor. What happens when you feel in life stuck? Because I know people probably hear that and think, well, it would be great if I was a tree planted by the water, but I don't feel like I'm planted there. And it's hard to move, to transplant a plant. What happens if you feel like I just can't move? I'm stuck.
Yeah. It's a great question. I mean, I guess a couple things come to mind. First off, when you look at this passage, it says a tree planted by the water, and that was a picture of the Jordan River right there. And so you think about this, like the river doesn't come to a tree, the tree has to come to the river, right? And so if you feel stuck, sometimes we're waiting for God to come to us and provide for us, but sometimes the only way you can get there is you got to be replanted. You got to say, God, you know what? I can't stay where I am and expect you to come to me. I've got to ask for you to uproot me and plant me on something different. And so if you feel stuck, that's one thing. The other thing I think sometimes is maybe we just need to, in the middle of what feels like stuckness, there's a problem, there's a challenge, there's a difficulty. Maybe we just need to grow a little deeper, and we feel stuck, but the water's there. We just haven't gotten deep enough to see it. And so maybe
point.
the trial is not God turning his back on you. Maybe the trial is the thing he wants to do to say, grow a little deeper. I'm here. You just need to get a little deeper.
Right. I love the prayer that it's, God, don't remove the obstacles from my path. Rather, give me the strength to endure the obstacles in my path.
Right.
And your analogy, even at the end of Redwoods, it takes the rocks in the soil to even act as anchors when wind comes. It takes the other roots to act as anchors. So there's something to be said for what looks like an obstacle God uses as an anchor.
Yeah.
He uses as a point to bring back. Rock bottom, you realize the rock is Christ.
Right.
It's like that's the foundation.
It's pretty good.
And I also think of, that command promise that you're talking about. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. The first is the command for us to draw near.
Yeah.
And the second is his promise to say, and I will always reciprocate.
Right.
So this is saying, hey, make every effort you can to draw near.
Yeah.
And a resource, kind of a bonus, is if you search on our YouTube page, Unstuck, we did a series all about that. And that might be a good resource for people.
Yeah, for sure.
So another question is, that quote, that picture of, we've got 20-year-old believers who really should be 20 years old in terms of their spiritual maturity, but really they've just repeated year one 20 years.
They're still in first grade.
Yeah, right. So the question is, how do you know if you're growing?
Yeah, so I think fruit is one clear indication, and fruit doesn't necessarily mean that your life is going just swimmingly and everything's perfect. But it's the fruit of how you act even when things are hard. And so, I look at what's a picture of fruit in the scriptures. Well, it's the fruit of the Spirit. This is Galatians 5, starting in verse 22. Yeah. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Who wants a little more of those things in their life? And
Yeah.
so that's a picture of what fruit is, and God's trying to bring that out of us,
Yeah.
even when the heat comes, the drought comes.
That's good. The byproduct of, right? So it's like, okay, it's not saying circumstances are great.
Right.
It's saying that in the midst of it, do you have patience, or are you jumping right to anger?
Yeah.
Are you quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger?
Right.
Or are you just jumping? Right. So I think that's great. Looking at the fruit that's produced, it even says that, the whole point of roots is to
It's
get
the
to the
fruit.
fruits. Come on. Right?
Come on, we're rhyming. We're rhyming.
And so I think that's the indication, right? You're going to see more of that the more time you draw near to God.
Right.
The indicator. And then the last thing is kind of this idea of the game changer, not playing the same game as the world. I don't even know who to give credit to for this idea, and I don't even remember the direct quote, but it's this idea that we tend to focus 90% of our attention on the things that we see and hear.
Right.
And 10% is the spiritual, but really it's just the opposite. 90% is spiritual that we don't even perceive all the time, and 10% is not. So how do you get your mind into that mentality of looking more at the spiritual divide maybe than everything else we see? And then we'll
Yeah,
wrap up.
I think that the world has all kinds of answers. They try to answer a spiritual question with a worldly perspective.
Yeah.
And so, none of the disciplines, the academic disciplines or whatever, are bad. They're just not enough. They're incomplete. So economists say that they have the answer. Oh, wealth creation. Psychologists say it's like self-worth. If you had this, business leaders say that they have the solution. You're trying to solve, at the end of the day, the real problem is a spiritual problem. You're playing the wrong game. And so if you really want to understand the true root of the problem, Jesus he was playing a different game. He had a different perspective. There's a spiritual perspective that we need to have. So
Yeah. The heart is deceitful above all things.
True.
Beyond cure. But the Lord looks at the heart. So that's the right problem. That's the right way to navigate through some of the difficulties and tensions. It's the third option. I love that.
Love that.
Okay, so I'll end by saying this. The gospel is only a viable other option if you trust in it. So it all goes back to that trust.
Yeah.
If you can trust in the gospel, then it suddenly becomes a great answer and a viable third option for us as we navigate the tensions of life.
True.
All right, we love you. Stay connected, and we'll see you all later.
See ya.